If you were joining us today, you probably follow the global conversation around dining, travel, and content creation. You've seen the videos, right? The beautiful food, the enthusiastic diner, and then inevitably there's this moment where they handle their utensils, their chopsticks, in a way that just feels, well, off. We're going deeper than manners today. This deep dive is an archaeological expedition into a single question. Why does a small error with a utensil in Japan constitute what our source calls a catastrophic failure of character?
It's the perfect frame for our source material. This is not some simple guide to etiquette.
Not a do this, don't do that list.
Exactly. It is, as the authors title it, The Silent Indictment, a comprehensive treatise on the cultural semiotics of hashi and the public failure of decorum. The central premise is that the dining table is no longer a private space. It's a high-stakes, globally streamed stage.
Right.
So for anyone on camera, the act of eating performs a high-resolution character scan, instantaneously exposing one's deepest flaws.
I find that shift so fascinating, from a private act to a public performance. So if we accept that the camera is basically an X-ray, what is it looking for, and why does the analysis cut so deep?
It's hunting for sodachi. That's the core judgment.
Sodachi.
Yeah. And sodachi is a really comprehensive term. It means upbringing, education, self-discipline, and, your moral fiber. In Western culture, we might judge someone by their vocabulary or, their professional credentials. But in Japan, particularly in high-context Japanese culture, the priority is always wa.
Social harmony.
Social harmony.
Right. And maintaining that harmony means avoiding direct confrontation, correct? So if someone sees you mess up, they aren't going to tap you on the shoulder and offer a correction.
Absolutely not. No way. Direct correction is avoided specifically because it ruptures wa. Though for your manners, how you handle your body, your tools, your food, they become the primary heuristic for silent internal judgment.
So because they won't confront you.
They watch you, and they pass judgment silently and instantly.
That's such a powerful social contract. You know you won't be called out, but you also know that every single movement is being recorded and judged in the silent courtroom of the observer's mind. It puts immense pressure on decorum.
It does. And the source offers a fantastic analogy for the Western listener. Think about the common business lunch that doubles as a kind of covert interview. We've all heard of that cultural test they supposedly run, the salt and pepper test.
Oh, yeah, where the interviewer watches to see if you season your food before tasting it.
Or if you pass the salt and pepper together as a set.
Right, supposedly revealing your inherent respect for order or your tendency to jump to conclusions.
Exactly. It's a micro-behavior used to gauge macro-character traits. The source argues that chopstick usage in Japan is not just a test like that. It is a high-resolution scan of your character. It operates faster than the salt and pepper test, and the verdict is immediate.
And that verdict is?
Sodachi ga worry. Bad upbringing.
Wow. And what makes this bad upbringing verdict so devastating? Is it just, personal shame?
Oh, it's far from it. This is where the cultural weight really comes in. The judgment doesn't just stick to the individual diner.
Okay.
Because the error signals a lack of discipline and instruction, the indictment extends outward. It extends to their family, to their school, and often, by extension, to their entire culture of origin.
So when a foreign streamer makes these repeated what the source calls Kiraibashi errors.
Yes.
They aren't just seen as clumsy. They're seen as ambassadors of a culture that prioritizes, I guess, rudeness or carelessness over respect.
You've got it. The single act carries the weight of the collective. That's an important foundation. It tells you that these rules are not arbitrary. They are deeply ingrained cultural signifiers.
And that leads us seamlessly into the tool itself. We have to move beyond treating chopsticks like some kind of disposable fork and understand why that is, as the source labels it, a category error.
It's a category error because we fundamentally misunderstand the nature of the object. For the casual observer, chopsticks are simply implements for transport. They get food from the plate to your mouth. But the source insists we have to recognize their sacred function. They are not merely cutlery.
I was really struck by the etymology section in the source material. The pronunciation hashi is shared by two very different nouns.
Yes, and it's a vital linguistic detail. It's not a coincidence. Hashi, meaning chopsticks, is homophonous with hashi, meaning bridge, and also hashi, meaning edge or end.
A bridge and an edge.
A bridge and an edge.
So how do those two concepts inform the way the utensil is treated?
They define its role within the Shinto framework. Chopsticks act as a symbolic bridge. They connect the human realm, the diner, to the divine gifts of nature and the gods that produce the food. Food is thus understood not just as sustenance, but as a materialized blessing.
Not blessing.
So when you eat, you are engaging in a micro-ritual of gratitude. The chopstick is the sacred conduit for that ritual.
Okay, so if the chopstick is the bridge, then treating it carelessly, say tapping it on a bowl or pointing it, that's an act of desecration against the bridge itself. You're mocking the connection to the divine.
Exactly that. The source argues that when the instrument is used disrespectfully as a drumstick, a pointer, a toy, it ceases to be a functional utensil. It becomes a desecrated ritual object. This elevates the transgression instantly. It stops being a lapse in manners and becomes a spiritual slight against the source of the blessing.
That distinction changes everything about how seriously you take these rules. You know, if I'm using a knife or fork incorrectly in a Western setting, I might look clumsy, maybe a bit uncultured. But if I use a hashi incorrectly, I'm disrespecting the gods and the bounty of nature.
And this spiritual irreverence instantly projects specific character flaws. The source analyzes the 3 primary signals transmitted by consistently poor usage, which are basically the character judgments derived from your technical inability.
Let's define those 3 signals, the ones that form the foundation of that Sodachi judgment.
Okay, the first is rough usage. This signals a rough personality.
What does that entail?
It involves clicking the sticks together loudly, scraping them aggressively on the bowl, or just generally handling them with brute force. It indicates a lack of inner refinement and control, suggesting the diner is, well, uncivilized.
So treating the chopstick itself roughly means you treat people roughly. It suggests an underlying lack of gentleness or care.
Precisely. The second is greedy usage, which signals a selfish heart. This is all about manipulation, like trying to grab too much food at once, or attempting maneuvers that monopolize the communal dishes. It implies a person whose primary motivation is self-interest and who can't practice self-restraint, even in the presence of others.
We'll see that manifest very strongly in the Kiraibashi section when we talk about scavenging for food. And the third signal,
lazy usage. This signals an undisciplined mind. This covers acts like dragging bowls with your chopsticks, bridging them across a dish when resting, or just using the sticks inefficiently. It shows a profound unwillingness to apply the necessary mental and physical effort required for proper decorum. It suggests a lack of personal discipline, that your mind and body are not fully aligned toward a common, elegant goal.
So it's not just about dexterity, it's really about disposition. You are being judged on your inner disposition through your physical execution. That framing makes the Kiraibashi, the encyclopedia of shame, as the source calls it, less a random list of taboos and more a direct translation of these 3 fundamental character flaws.
That's the key transition. Kiraibashi, or detested chopsticks, are codified reactions to behaviors that disrupt aesthetic, hygienic, or spiritual order. They are the physical manifestations of rough, greedy, or lazy personalities. And we absolutely have to start with the most severe domain, the one that triggers the deepest cultural anxiety.
The taboos of death.
Yes. These are what the source calls the abominations. They trigger visceral distress because they take a symbol of life, the communal meal, and contaminate it by mimicking specific, solemn, and non-negotiable funeral rites.
And if you commit one of these,
the judgment is instant and severe, and it can even extend to cursing those present.
Let's start with the one that is probably the most commonly known error, yet its meaning is so often misunderstood by foreign visitors. Togabashi, the standing chopsticks.
Taboos. This is the act of stabbing your chopsticks vertically into a bowl of ice and just leaving them standing upright. It's sometimes also called tsukitatabashi or hotokibashi.
I can picture that action so clearly, and it seems almost innocent, like you're just parking the chopsticks while you take a drink or something. Why does this single act plunge the entire table into horror?
Because that configuration is exclusively reserved for the dead.
Exclusively, so no other context.
No other context. It is known as makurameshi, or pillow rice. This is the bowl of rice offered to the newly deceased, placed by the body before the wake. The upright sticks are a direct visual reference to senko, or incense sticks, which are used to purify the air and guide the soul.
So in that single careless moment, the diner is metaphorically transforming the meal from a celebration of life into a solemn funeral altar.
Exactly. The silent message is a curse. I am declaring this meal a funeral. I am cursing those present with bad luck or death. The source material's visual reference for this is chilling. It describes a ghostly, translucent image of a funeral altar superimposed behind the bowl of rice, visually confirming that the diner is treating their food as an offering meant for a corpse.
It's a fundamental sacrilege.
It's a violation of the boundary between life and death.
The cultural consequence for that single error is just staggering. And the second critical death taboo, hashiwatashi, carries an equally chilling reference.
Hashiwatashi. It's sometimes called owasibashi or hiroibashi. This is the act of passing food directly from one pair of chopsticks to another so they meet midway. This is a common, almost friendly gesture in many Western cultures, sharing a morsel. Hey, try this.
But in Japan, this gesture is a catastrophic failure of decorum because it mimics the ritual of katsuage.
It mimics the ritual of gathering the ashes. After a cremation, family members use special, often oversized chopsticks to carefully pass the bones of the deceased from person to person before placing them into the urn.
So that's the only time that happens.
It is the only time two pairs of chopsticks hold the same object simultaneously. It's a deeply solemn, unique moment.
So by passing a piece of, say, yakitori to your friend with your chopsticks, you are broadcasting the silent message, I am treating this food like a cremated human bone fragment.
The comparison is unavoidable and immediate. The source's powerful description of visually desaturating the food item to make it look like a calcified bone really drives home the gravity. You are invoking the crematorium at the dinner table.
So those two, tadabashi and hashiwatashi.
They are the two non-negotiable, critically taboo actions that drag the spiritual gravity of death into the everyday act of dining. They must be avoided at all costs.
That is a profound baseline. Now let's shift from the spiritual and the sinister to domain 2. The taboos of greed and gluttony, what our source calls the animalistic actions. These signal profound selfishness, poor hygiene, and a lack of control.
Yeah, these behaviors are all about disrupting the communal joy of the meal and prioritizing one's own immediate gratification over the experience of others.
Okay, let's look at Kiraibashi, or the scavenging chopsticks.
This is using your chopsticks to dig through a communal serving dish, say, a bowl of simmered vegetables or a large shared plate, to find the best or most desirable pieces, pushing other things aside.
And what's the implication there beyond just being a little bit picky?
It signals the absolute height of selfishness. First, you destroy the aesthetic arrangement created by the chef, which is a key part of the culinary experience in Japan.
Right, the presentation is part of the meal.
It is. And furthermore, you leave behind the pieces you've touched and rejected, often coating them in your own saliva from your chopsticks for everyone else to deal with. The source's comparison here is deliberately brutal. It likens the diner's action to that of a raccoon digging through a trash can. It illustrates a complete lack of dignity or social consideration.
It's a visual confession that you value your own immediate desire above the enjoyment and the hygiene of the entire group. That's a serious indictment of your sadachi.
And if we move from scavenging to neburibashi, the licking chopsticks, the issue shifts heavily toward hygiene and just base behavior.
This is the act of licking the tips of the chopsticks clean of sauce or holding them in your mouth for an extended period. I've actually seen content creators try to justify this as showing appreciation for the flavor.
That justification is entirely 100% false within this cultural context. It is intensely unhygienic, it's base, and it signals desperate greed. You are debasing the tool by covering it in saliva, suggesting you cannot bear to lose even the smallest remnant of sauce. This is one of the behaviors the source states should provoke a physical kimochi warui and ick response in the observer.
So it's not appreciative, it's just gross.
It suggests a lack of control and a really infantile relationship with food.
It's the difference between a refined palate and a desperate one. Now, completing this domain of self-control issues, we have komibashi, the stuffing chopsticks.
This is shoving excessive amounts of food into an already full mouth or trying to talk while your mouth is clearly overloaded. The source ties this directly to Buddhist mythology. This is the behavior of a gaki.
A gaki.
A starving ghost. A figure in Buddhism characterized by an insatiable hunger and a complete lack of self-control.
So the behavior suggests you have this deep fear of starvation, even when you're clearly in a situation of plenty.
Precisely. It signals a profound lack of inner discipline. A person of good sodachi eats deliberately, modestly, and controls their pace. It shows that they are not ruled by their primal appetites. Komibashi is a public declaration that the appetite rules the person.
So if domain 1 was spiritual contamination and domain 2 was about social disgust, let's move to domain 3, the taboos of aggression and incompetence. Here, the chopsticks are perceived as weapons or symbols of utter failure.
The first one is incredibly relevant to our deep dive on content creators. Sashibashi, the pointing chopsticks.
This is simply pointing at a person, an object, or a direction with the chopsticks in your hand. Seems simple enough.
But the source makes it very clear that in Japan, pointing with an object, especially a sharp, extended object like a chopstick, is inherently interpreted as a threat or an aggressive posture. It is a major breach of respectful communication.
And when you are filming, that threat is amplified, isn't it?
Massively. For a streamer, pointing the chopsticks directly at the camera lens is labeled the peak offense in this category. The camera lens represents the collective eyes of the audience, particularly the Japanese viewers.
So when you point at the camera,
When you point a sharp object toward the camera, the silent message is, "I dominate you," or "This is my stage and I am issuing a threat." It causes an instinctive physical discomfort in the viewer, who may feel a need to actually recoil from the screen.
that makes the visual reference from the source, the sharp tips thrusting toward the viewer's eye, slightly out of focus, so impactful. You are physically posturing against your own audience.
It's not an accident, it's a broadcast of aggression. Now, we move to the phonetically similar but very different offense, sashibashi, the stabbing chopsticks.
This is the act of spearing food using the chopstick like a spike, usually because the diner just lacks the dexterity to execute the proper pinching grip.
This is perhaps the single clearest public confession of incompetence. If you cannot pick up a piece of food using the proper technique, you resort to violence against it. You treat the food, the blessing, as an enemy to be impaled, rather than an ingredient to be handled delicately.
It's insulting on so many levels. To the food, to the chef who prepared it, and to the adult status of the diner.
The source's commentary here is especially critical. They suggest an overlay visual of a pacifier icon or a forbidden sign whenever a delicate piece of sushi or tempura is impaled.
A pacifier icon.
Yes, to symbolize the infantile skill level. You are admitting, by that action, that you possess the hand-eye coordination of a toddler. That is the definition of shame in this context.
And the final violation in this aggressive domain, Kiraibashi, the tearing chopsticks.
This happens when the diner holds one chopstick in each hand, effectively treating them like a knife and a fork, to rip or saw food apart.
Oh, I can picture that.
It's described as barbaric and primitive. You are separating the complementary pair of utensils and using them as crude claws. This signals a complete rejection of refined technique and an embrace of brute, uncivilized force.
That brings us to our final domain of Kiraibashi. Domain 4, the taboos of sloth and disrespect. These are the behaviors that signal sheer laziness or a direct insult to the hospitality of the host or the restaurant.
Let's start with yusabashi, the pulling chopsticks.
This is using the chopsticks, often by hooking them onto the bowl's rim, to drag the dish across the table closer to yourself, rather than using your hands to pick it up and move it.
It's pure unadulterated laziness. You are treating the hashi, the ritual object, the bridge, as a common grappling hook. The implication is that the slight inconvenience of lifting a bowl or a plate is too great for you. You prioritize your sloth over the respectful handling of the beautiful dishware. It shows a profound disregard for the setting.
Next up is watashibashi, the bridging chopsticks.
This is the act of laying your chopsticks across the top of a bowl, like a little bridge. While many tourists might think this is an acceptable rest position, it carries two strong negative implications. First, it signals rudely, "I am done," or even, "I refuse to eat more." Second, it's precarious and it risks dropping the utensils.
So what's the correct way?
The respectful resting place is the hashiyuki, the dedicated chopstick rest. If one isn't provided, you lay them neatly on the side of your tray or plate, parallel to the edge of the table.
The dedicated rest is key. Using the bowl as a rest sends a message of rejection or finality that lacks grace.
It communicates the end of the conversation before the host is ready. And finally, perhaps the most widespread and often unconscious insult committed by foreign diners, rubbing waribashi.
Vigorously rubbing disposable chopsticks waribashi together after breaking them apart. Why is this action, which seems like such a basic cleaning measure, such a devastating offense?
Because it broadcasts a direct silent accusation to the establishment. By rubbing them, you are communicating, "I assume you have provided me with cheap, splintery trash, and I must prepare this cool before I can trust it near my mouth."
That is a direct questioning of the quality of the entire restaurant.
It is a massive insult to their hospitality, their honor, and their perceived level of establishment. A quality restaurant invests in quality waribashi or uses reusable chopsticks. If they provide disposable ones, they are assumed to be clean and splinter-free. The source's image here is key. sawdust gently falling onto the table, while the chef in the background looks visibly saddened or offended. That sadness is the internalization of the insult. You have questioned their pride in their work.
The Kiraibashi section proves that every single movement is a weighted cultural signifier. Now that we understand the mechanics of failure, let's address the specific challenges and taboos faced by content creators operating in a Japanese commercial environment.
This moves us beyond simple chopstick errors into legal and commercial negligence, which the source labels the broadcasting taboo or the studio fallacy.
The violation being treating a busy, paying restaurant as your personal, free recording studio. What is the fundamental breach of law or etiquette here?
It's really twofold. First, there's the legal aspect. Privacy rights, or shozoken. In Japan, the right to one's own image is strictly protected. Filming openly in a public setting, especially a tight restaurant space, carries a high risk of recording other customers without their explicit consent. The source warns this is not just a breach of manners, but a serious legal liability for the content creator and potentially for the restaurant as well.
Most streamers completely overlook that. They focus on the food and the camera angle, forgetting they're capturing paying customers who want peace and anonymity.
Precisely. And that leads to the second, equally serious offense, the business reality. Streaming, vlogging, monetized filming, these are commercial activities. You are utilizing a commercial space, the restaurant's atmosphere, lighting, ambiance, to build your brand or generate income. Doing this at a public table or counter is seen as freeloading on the establishment and actively disturbing other paying customers who came for an intimate, tranquil meal.
It's an issue of economic disrespect. You are utilizing their resources without paying the appropriate fee for that usage.
And that leads to the very strict corrective protocol outlined by the source. If you intend to film for business, you must book a kushitsu, a private room. The protocol is uncompromising. If you cannot afford the expense of the private room, the source states you cannot afford to film in that restaurant. End of story.
That draws a very firm distinction between a quick tourist photo for personal memories and commercial exploitation.
And the source specifically labels filming at a sushi counter as the height of arrogance. The counter is treated as a sacred space for a deep, serious engagement between the chef and the customer, what's often called omakase, leaving it up to the chef. It is a dialogue, not a stage.
So to bring in cameras and lights?
To turn that intimate, high-concentration workspace into a content backdrop is just unforgivable arrogance.
That puts the responsibility entirely on the creator to respect the environment. Now let's pivot to advanced maneuvers and what the source calls strategic retreats. For the serious diner, what are the acceptable ways to navigate tricky foods without committing a Kiraibashi?
Okay, the primary challenge for beginners is what the source calls the sushi exception. We mentioned this earlier. Inexperienced diners, trying to be polite, attempt to use chopsticks on delicate nigiri sushi. The pressure crushes the fish and rice.
And the rice crumbles into the soy sauce.
The splash tragedy, as they call it.
Which is an enormous insult to the chef, who has spent years, sometimes decades, perfecting the balance and integrity of the rice grain, the sherry.
Absolutely. So the pro tip, which the source encourages, is that it is entirely acceptable and often preferred, especially in casual or even mid-range settings, to eat nigiri and maki with your hands. Using your hands ensures the structural integrity of the food is preserved, and you avoid that insulting rice crumbling pitfall.
That's a practical solution to avoid showing incompetence. But what about the person who honestly tries and fails? Is there any dignity in abandoning the hashi entirely?
Yes. There is absolute dignity in what the source calls the strategic retreat. The common myth is that using chopsticks is mandatory for respect. The reality, the source clarifies, is that the ultimate sign of respect is simply to eat cleanly and without causing offense or a mess.
So the true shame isn't admitting you can't use chopsticks well.
No. The true shame is a grown adult who insists on struggling with a warabashi using a clumsy toddler grip, dropping food, creating a hygienic mess, and broadcasting that sheer incompetence. That is humiliating to the diner and deeply disrespectful to the meal.
I think the source's suggested solution here is just brilliant. Self-awareness.
It is the ultimate display of sodachi. The solution is not to struggle and fail, but to come prepared. Serious diners, the source suggests, should carry their own portable cutlery, a small spoon and a fork. Using a fork shows self-awareness, pragmatism, and a commitment to eating cleanly. Fumbling and dropping food shows a profound lack of self-awareness and control. The fork is the lesser of two evils by a very wide margin.
That's a huge relief for anyone feeling intimidated. Use the tool you can manage cleanly. Now, let's discuss the social traps involving asking for help, because this also touches on Aegyo Bogai.
Right. We need to discuss two related taboos regarding interactions with locals. First, do not ask staff for lessons.
Why is asking a server or a chef who are experts to critique your form or teach you correct manners viewed so negatively?
Because they are working professionals and they are optimized for speed, efficiency, and flawless service. Asking them to pause their duties to be your personal etiquette tutor is Aegyo Bogai obstruction of business.
Obstruction of business.
They are focused on turning tables and preparing complex, time-sensitive dishes. While they will smile, because professional service demands it, internally, the source reveals this is viewed as a selfish disruption and an insult to their professional time and focus. You are treating a commercial operation like a cultural training school.
You are distracting them from the primary task they are paid for. That makes perfect sense in a fast-paced environment.
And the second trap is relying on a local or a Japanese friend to correct you in real time, what our source calls the trap of asking a local. The first reality is the silence. Due to wa, a Japanese host or friend will almost never correct a guest directly in public. That silence is forbearance. It's them enduring your awkwardness. It is not approval of your technique. You cannot assume your technique is good simply because you haven't been corrected.
That's such a critical piece of information.
Yeah.
The absence of criticism is not permission.
Not at all. And the second reality is that you might be placing your friend in an impossible position. Surveys, the source notes, suggest that fewer than 30% of Japanese adults hold chopsticks with the perfect traditional Ogasawara-ryu form themselves.
Oh, that's a fascinating statistic.
It is. So if you ask them for a lesson, you may genuinely embarrass them if they are unsure of their own technique, or you force them into the awkward position of endorsing your bad form just to avoid conflict. Better to learn on your own time.
We've spent a lot of time defining failure, humiliation, and avoidance. Now let's transition to the gold standard, the pinnacle of discipline, what the source calls the path to acquiring true cultural capital. We need to seek out the Ogasawara-ryu School of Etiquette.
This is the definitive authority, the undisputed pinnacle of Japanese manners. And to understand the gravity of their instruction, we really need to understand their history.
Tell us about the lineage, founded in 1188, that is nearly 850 years of continuous instruction.
It is. The Ogasawara-ryu was founded in 1188 and served as the official etiquette instructors to the shoguns. Their instruction was never about, frivolous court manners. These were the battlefield-tested, biomechanically efficient protocols of the samurai class.
Biomechanically efficient, that's a powerful distinction. Why did the samurai need efficient table manners?
Because for the warrior class, every single action had to convey maximum control with minimum movement. Etiquette, or rei, wasn't separate from martial discipline. It was completely integrated. Their dining etiquette had to maintain a physical posture and grace that allowed for immediate action if necessary. It projected authority, confidence, and internal control. It was essential training for a mind that demanded absolute precision.
And their primary occupation links back to that same discipline, yabusame.
Yes, the family's primary role is still linked to yabusame, which is the etiquette of mounted archery. You're shooting arrows from horseback as a dedication ceremony to a shrine. This requires extreme precision, control, and a total unity of body and spirit. Their dining instruction reflects the same demand for absolute physical mastery.
So if the goal is mastery, we need the technical blueprint. Let's get into the 3 key biomechanical points of the Ogasawara-ryu Perfect Grip.
Okay, this is where we shift from generalized guidance to surgical precision. The first point is the anchor, the bottom chopstick.
The anchor must be stable?
Completely stable. It rests firmly at the base of the thumb and across the ring finger. Crucially, it does not move. It is the stationary support structure, the foundation of the bridge. The failure of most beginners is trying to move both sticks. The Ogasawara method isolates the movement.
So the entire stability of your grip, the entire structure, depends on that bottom stick being perfectly still.
Absolutely still. Then we have the actuator, the top chopstick. This is the one that performs all the work. It is held like a pencil, lightly controlled by the thumb, index, and middle fingers. The movement, the manipulation, the pinching, and the lifting comes solely from the index and middle fingers, moving that top stick against the stationary bottom stick.
This sounds so much more graceful. It eliminates the need for that crude claw grip we often see. It makes the motion precise and economical.
It is the definition of efficiency. It ensures that when you lift food, it is done with control and elegance, which eliminates the wobbling and dropping that leads to sashibashi, the stabbing out of frustration.
And the final check. How do you know if the grip is correct?
The check. If you hold the sticks up and they cross, forming an X shape, or if your hand bunches up like a crab claw, the grip is fundamentally wrong. Crossing the stick signals that you have lost independent control of the two sticks, which reduces your capacity for fine motor movement and is considered deeply inelegant and inefficient.
So the goal is two parallel lines.
Two parallel lines acting in perfect concert.
For those listeners who feel a bit overwhelmed by this detail, but are still committed to improvement, the source offers a solution for digital access to this centuries-old knowledge.
Yeah, there is simply no excuses left for ignorance anymore. The knowledge is highly accessible. The source explicitly directs you to search for the specific Japanese phrase, Ogasawara-ryu online lesson, manners of eating,
On major streaming platforms like YouTube.
and the value here is immense. You're getting high-quality demonstrations, often by the current grandmaster, detailing the exact angle of the hand and the precise moment of the lift.
And critically, the availability of automatic translation subtitles completely removes the language barrier. You are accessing world-class instruction straight from the line of shogunal etiquette masters for free. It democratizes the acquisition of this skill.
Which leads perfectly to the final, high-level takeaway the source presents, viewing this expertise not as a mere skill, but as a genuine investment. The source makes the case for acquiring what they call an intangible asset. While official, in-person Ogasawara seminars are premium instruction, the value you acquire transcends the immediate cost.
How does refined table etiquette equate to an intangible financial or social asset?
The argument is that in a high-context society that values subtle signals and discipline, possessing the physical carriage and table manners of the shogun's court creates an instant, powerful aura of authority and refinement. It signals that you are someone who takes discipline seriously, who respects ritual, and who is worthy of being trusted.
It's a permanent, personal brand upgrade that commands immediate respect in any room in Japan, whether you are in a boardroom or a high-end restaurant.
Exactly. It signals that you have mastered the internal control, the sadachi necessary to navigate the most demanding situations with grace. It bypasses language barriers and cultural gaps entirely. You walk in with the subtle but powerful confidence of having achieved mastery over a core cultural ritual. That asset is portable, it is enduring, and it dictates how seriously you are taken.
What a profound journey. We started with the careless use of a utensil, and we have ended with the acquisition of a permanent, intangible asset, the refinement of the samurai class. This deep dive has truly unpacked the severity of these offenses.
We've established that these taboos are not arbitrary. They are rooted in spiritual reverence, social harmony, wa, and the essential samurai demand for physical and mental control. The summary table in the source clearly designates the most critical violations: tatebashi, the death curse; hashiwatashi, the bone-passing ritual; and commercially, filming at the counter, the height of arrogance. These three are instant, catastrophic failures.
And they're followed closely by the high offenses like sashibashi, pointing or threatening, the other sashibashi, stabbing out of incompetence, and niburibashi, the licking, the disgust. The source material's goal was so clear. By exposing the deep historical, religious, and social roots of these prohibitions, we intend to strip away the shield of ignorance.
And that stripping away leads to the most critical final question. If a society places such intense focus on decorum, where tiny physical errors can expose the entirety of your moral fiber, your sodadachi, what does that reveal about your own cultural blind spots? What are the subtle rituals, the ones you take for granted every single day, that you are performing incorrectly? And how might you be judged silently by the rituals of dining, of meeting, or of simply greeting in your own culture or in others without ever once receiving a verbal correction?
An essential thought to take away. Your manners are truly your unedited autobiography. Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.